This is CBC Here and Now.
Good evening and welcome to Here and Now. I'm Anthony Germain, and we start tonight with the offshore.
I'm Terry Roberts in St. John's, where for the second time this month, millions in public money is being pledged to this province's battered oil industry. This time around, Hibernia, the project that started it all, is getting a boost. Like all producers caught in the grips of this pandemic, it's been a hard year for operations on the Hibernia platform. Hundreds of layoffs. Drilling operations halted.
We've had to take some tough decisions.
But this morning, the man in charge of Hibernia was gushing with enthusiasm.
This is just a great news story for Newfoundland and Labrador and for Hibernia.
Earlier this month, government pledged $41.5 million to Husky Energy to help keep the idled West White Rose project on life support, creating work for more than 300 people. Today, it was Hibernia's turn. $38 million from the province's oil and gas industry recovery fund will be used to create or maintain 150 jobs over the next 18 months. The cash comes from a pot of money handed over to the province by Ottawa to help oil industry workers and lower carbon emissions in the offshore. Premier Andrew Furey led the announcement. Amid speculation, there could be an early election call in the new year.
We felt that this was important for Newfoundlanders and Labradorians to hear this exciting news before heading into the holiday season.
In all, $93 million will be invested to make Hibernia's oil wells more productive, upgrade drilling equipment on the rig, and improve wireless digital technology on this aging platform. Job creation will begin as early as January, creating spin-offs in the beleaguered supply and service sector, and prolong the life of the iconic Hibernia platform.
I believe the Hibernia project has decades of production left, and this investment will increase the likelihood that we will still be here operating this project and supporting the economy of this province for 20 or 30 or even 40 more years to come.
The Premier's defending the large investment of public money.
The purpose of this money is to ensure that Newfoundland and Labrador's offshore is well positioned when this commodity does return, and it is returning.
Energy Minister Andrew Parsons says at least 2 other proposals are currently being evaluated from the oil industry for possible funding, with more announcements to come as early as next month. The NDP described today's announcement as more corporate handouts. Leader Alison Coffin expressed concern that the government is propping up an industry that is in decline. Meanwhile, the PC party had a very different reaction and is again criticizing the government for not pouring more public money into the oil industry.
Is this going to solve our problems? It's short-term help, and it helps the people involved right now, but we got much bigger problems, and going and having these so-called good news announcements, I really got to sit back and wonder, because you look at the Terra Nova sitting idle out in Bull Arm.
Terry Roberts, CBC News, St. John's.
You know, as one storm system exits, the next one moves in. That part is not uncommon, but what is the kind of weather we're going to see with this system as we move through the next couple of days heading into Christmas. So this system pushing off, but what we're looking at is 2 big things in play. We've got high pressure in place down here. That is going to dominate the weather for Newfoundland. Labrador, however, seeing a lot of mixed precipitation with this, and everybody getting exceptionally warm temperatures as we head through the next few days. As the system pushes northward, high pressure really dominating most of Newfoundland. That means generally sunny skies. We've got snowfall switching to rainfall up around Labrador, and temperatures could be as much as about 20-25 degrees above the seasonal mark, believe it or not. There's the snow that moves in as we head through tonight and tomorrow, and then the transition over to rainfall for Christmas Day, and it could be a fair bit of rainfall, come to speak of it, in some areas anyway. There's a look at forecasts for tonight. Temperatures pretty much around the seasonal mark. We're starting to see some of that snow move into Lab City tonight, but all of this is changing as we head through the next 24 to 48 hours. I'll have your full forecast coming up in just a bit.
Thanks, Nick. That's Nick Cernkovich, who's filling in for Ashley tonight. Now, to other news, a 26-year-old man accused of killing his father is going to spend Christmas in custody at Her Majesty's Penitentiary. Brandon Knoftel was charged last week with second-degree murder and assault following an incident at a home in Renouse. Today, he made his second court appearance, and Here Now's Jeremy Eaton was there.
Brandon Knoftel, dressed all in black, seated in a secure room in the nearby HMP, didn't spend much time before a judge today. His hands remained gripped together in his lap, rocking back and forth as he waited. The 26-year-old St. John's man is accused of second-degree murder in the death of Robert Paul Knoftel. We're told that the two had a father-son relationship. It's not clear if they're related biologically or through marriage. Knoftel is also charged with assaulting Robert Knoftel's partner. While the cause of death hasn't been made public by police or the court, one of Knoftel's charges stems from him possessing a knife, a weapon he shouldn't have been in possession of. Knoftel is facing 11 charges in total, including one for assault with a weapon, assault, and uttering threats. Those charges stem from another incident in 2019. Robert Knoftel's obituary appeared online this afternoon. It says the 41-year-old leaves to mourn his wife, 5 children, a grandson, and another one on the way. Brandon Knoftel was not named. A funeral for Robert Knoftel will be held on December 29th. Brandon Knoftel is scheduled back in court on January 5th. Jeremy Eaton, CBC News, St. John's.
Well, last week we took an in-depth look at the local drug scene through the eyes of two brothers, Gary and Mitch, and we heard about a frightening night when Gary overdosed. But there is a detail that we didn't report, and this was when Mitch called 911, and he had to wait for quite some time after the ambulance arrived.
I yelled at her, "Call an ambulance now," and she called the ambulance, and then we sat there and waited and waited and waited until finally I see the lights and I hear this ambulance pull up, and we still have to wait, and we're still waiting, and we're still waiting, and I'm wondering, why isn't this ambulance coming into my house? Why isn't this first responder coming into my house right now? And so I leave Gary, I go downstairs, and I open the door, and they're just sitting out there in the ambulance, and I'm incredibly confused and getting a little bit angry. So I go out the front door and I go down to the ambulance and I say, I need you to come in and save my brother's life, please. Like, why are you still out here? And they tell me that they're not allowed to go into an overdose situation without a police officer on hand, and the police officer wasn't showing up. And I had to beg them to come in. I had to promise them that we had no weapons. I had to promise them that they were safe, that it was going to be okay. And I could tell by the look in her eye that she was afraid. She was afraid to go in.
Does part of you understand why they would be reluctant to enter a house?
100%, especially since then I've heard many stories of first responders who go into these overdose situations and have been assaulted, attacked. I understand why the first responder didn't come in right away. I don't understand why the police officer wasn't there. I don't understand why he wasn't there at faster.
Now, in a statement about ambulance responses to overdoses, Eastern Health tells Here and Now the following. It may be determined that the environment is unsafe and paramedics are directed to wait for police, but it may also be determined that the scene is declared safe and the paramedic is able to proceed to initiate treatment without police presence. Eastern Health won't discuss details about what happened the night Gary overdosed, citing privacy provisions of the Personal Health Information Act. Health Canada today authorized Moderna's COVID-19 vaccine, and the first doses are expected to arrive in Newfoundland and Labrador next week. There will be 2 batches of 2,400 vaccines to start with, and the province says those shipments will be prioritized for residents in Labrador's remote and isolated Indigenous communities. Canada by the end of the month.
This authorization is a critical step in ensuring a COVID-19 vaccine is available to all Canadians in all parts of the country. Unlike some of the other vaccines in use around the world, it doesn't need to be transported and stored at extremely cold temperatures. Since many Canadians live outside major urban areas, this vaccine can be used in communities that haven't had access to COVID-19 vaccines to date.
As I rudely interrupted, 168,000 doses should arrive in Canada by the end of the month, and next year the country is expected to get enough Moderna doses to vaccinate 20 million people. The other approved vaccine, Pfizer, was greenlit on December the 9th. Now, back in this province, roughly 1,900 priority healthcare workers have gotten that shot so far, and they will get their second required dose with the batch of Pfizer vaccines that arrived in St. John's yesterday. Meanwhile, one new case of COVID to report in the province today. This time it is a woman in her 40s returning to the eastern region from work in British Columbia. Public Health is asking passengers on Air Canada Flight 696 leaving Toronto on Tuesday and landing in St. John's on Wednesday to call 811 for some testing. Now, 7 people have recovered from the virus since yesterday, and that leaves 23 active cases in the province. Well, the past year and a half has brought Carrie Pittman tragic loss. Her husband, who had been by her side for the past 19 years, died suddenly. And yet, despite all of the hardship of 2020, it's given Carrie Pittman new life and a new outlook. Here now is Heather Gillis with that story.
This is my 9-month-old son, Noah. Say hi, Noah. Wave hi.
Noah is a happy baby, and like any parent, Carrie Lee Pittman calls her son a complete joy and miracle.
And his expressions are just like his father's. It's not even fit.
It's a bittersweet reminder. Noah's father, John, died suddenly on June 19th, 2019, just 1 week after Pittman found out Noah was on the way after years of trying.
I went home, got in bed, and within 2 hours, I woke to my dog at the edge of the bed barking, and I came out and found John on the floor, and he was having some kind of cardiac episode, and I couldn't flip him over to help him. The cops came upstairs and told me that he didn't make it, that he had died from a massive heart attack.
John's death was utter devastation for Pittman, who was thinking of creative ways to announce the couple's pregnancy to the family.
Are you 2 months old today? Yes, you are.
Noah was born on February 16th, 2020, a bright spot in an otherwise dark year.
And yeah, so I just flipped my thinking about it, and instead of taking a tragedy and a terrible situation and dwelling on it, I turned it into John left me with something that I could cherish and love forever, and a piece of him that I always had. So.
Through the tragic loss of her husband and throughout this year and the pandemic, Pittman has learned a powerful lesson about the importance of positive thinking.
You know, 2020 has been a terrible year for many people, but I think people need to flip their thinking about it, because while it's been terrible, it's also been great. It's been great in a lot of ways because it forced families to kind of relax. It forced people to get out and do things that they probably haven't done with their kids, for example, for a long time, getting outdoors. I can never say 2020 was a bad year for me because I got him. And it's the best gift, and it will override any other year ever.
And that new outlook is how she'll be approaching the next year as we enter another year with the pandemic. Heather Gillis, CBC News, St. John's.
Well, from Carrie's optimism to another bright side, the pandemic threw a wrench into one 10-year-old's plans. Now, Caden, who is visually impaired, had hoped to get a buddy dog this year. And now, thanks to the CNIB and a local charity called Wheels for Wishes, Caden got his canine.
Guess who it is? That's your boy Flynn. Here you go, little man.
Flynn is a full-trained buddy dog. Well, I need him because my eyesight isn't great. I was like, I couldn't even speak for a moment. And then he nearly knocked me to the floor. He really, really, really helps me, like, with obstacles and all that. Then there's like a vehicle coming down the road. He would kind of pull to the left a little bit. He's really bringing our family together.
Look at you.
There's 10 of us in Wheels for Wishes. This year we took on the CNIB to get a buddy dog for a little boy named Caden. Flynn is a 2.5-year-old dog. He's a fully trained guide dog that has a vitamin deficiency, which put him into the Buddy Dog program. So we did a moving type car show. We did a cruise called Cruising 'Cause We Care. People paid an entry fee. Sponsors came on board and sponsored the event, and we had a group turnout. We drove all throughout the city, so anyone who knew about it, wanted to see what cars were around the area, could just park on the side of the road and watch what was going on. It's pretty nice when you can make magic, and it's pretty special. It's the reward of volunteering, is to seeing exactly the impact of what the car community and the people around you can do.
There is going to be this time of transition as people are vaccinated and inoculated. The virus is still going to do its thing and spread. So we need to make sure that we're getting the vaccine out as fast and as effective and as responsibly as we can.
Welcome back. Well, the pandemic has put financial strains on legions in the province, and yet they've still found a way to support veterans this Christmas with gifts for people in long-term care at the Caribou Veterans Pavilion in St. John's. Here now's Heather Gillis has that story.
56 presents destined for long-term care residents lay under the tree at the Royal Canadian Legion in Pleasantville this morning. Patrick O'Rourke, a service officer with the Legion, gathered many of the gifts inside each bag.
We got a beautiful throw blanket for him. And a word hunt from to play games with, all of them over there.
There are socks, chips, and candy, and then necessities like soap, deodorant, and shaving cream. Little things Legion President John McDonald hopes will mean a lot for the residents.
Maybe they don't have family, and a gift from strangers would be an uplifting thing for them, I think.
It's been a tough year for Legions across the province, with many of them dipping into the red during the pandemic.
Well, actually, every Legion in Newfoundland is still struggling. We were closed for 6 months. We opened in September, and we're paying our bills. I can just say that we are paying our bills. It's going to be a long road to get back to where we were a year ago, and that's not just our Legion. We need the support of the community.
And with extra pandemic visiting restrictions, they say it's also been a hard year for those in long-term care. That's why Legion members felt it was important to provide gifts for 40 men and 16 women living at the pavilion.
From the Legion's point of view, we had to do this. Even though we're in financial difficulty, this is something we had to do to let people know that we're still here. Well, it's important because the Legion was created to support veterans. And the members of the pavilion up there are, in their 90s right now. They're all World War II and Korean War veterans. And we owe them a debt of gratitude, and I think why we're doing this is because of what they did for us, and we will remember them.
Heather Gillis, CBC News, St. John's.
All right, well, you may have noticed a bit earlier on the program, Ashley is off. I guess the good season has started earlier, so we have somebody else helping us with weather this evening, and it's Nick Cernkovich.
Well, as I said earlier, we've got this big storm system that's made its way across the country, and it is now going to be affecting eastern Canada right as we get to Christmas Eve and Christmas Day, really depending on where you are. What's happening here is sort of twofold. We've got high pressure in place out across the Atlantic. This is going to keep weather generally nice across most of the province, but this system here is going to bring a mixed bag from about Lab City across to Goose Bay, and that's where we're looking at the potential for some heavy snow before we switch to heavy rainfall, and everybody seeing exceptionally mild temperatures with this. As the system moves eastward, the snowfall starts in tonight, really kind of gets going as we move through tomorrow. And then Christmas Day is where it transitions over to rainfall, but that mild air in place, southerly wind in place as well, and that's really going to be the setup as we head through most of the weekend, in fact. Now, in terms of the timing of this, we're looking at the snowfall starting tonight in Lab City, moving across most of Labrador as we head through tomorrow. If you draw a line from about Lab City to about Goose Bay, that's really kind of your rain-snow line. Now, it basically stays as snow until we get to Christmas morning. And then early Christmas morning, it transitions over to some potentially freezing rain and then rainfall, and it's basically a rainfall event after that. Before the rain, though, snowfall accumulations could be anywhere from about 5 to 15 centimeters, depending on where you are, and then we see that transition. So tonight, as I said earlier, pretty normal in terms of temperatures, mild weather, in terms of precipitation, not much going on, and our temps are right about where they should be for this time of year. Tomorrow we start to see the warm up, especially as you get up toward Labrador there, and we're really going to start to see that warm up heading into Christmas Day. Look at the winds out of the south and the southwest, and that's what's going to drive in some of that warmer air as we move through the next couple of days. Now, Christmas morning, you'll wake up and you're looking at rainfall for most of Labrador. The rain intensifies as we head through the afternoon and continues right into the weekend as well. It's not until Saturday night where the cold front moves through Lab City, temperatures drop into Sunday. It won't be until Sunday night where we see that across eastern parts of Labrador. So really kind of timing depends on where you are across the province. Now, that being said, this is where all the action is taking place. Most areas from St. John's up to St. Anthony, really seeing nothing in terms of weather, just fairly nice weather. Rainfall totals here could be as much as 10 to 20 millimeters of rain with this system before that tapers off and we switch back to more seasonal temperatures and back to some light snowfall as well toward the end of the weekend. So forecast for Friday, take a look at this. Now Lab City, 7 degrees. To put that in perspective, the average for this time of year, close to minus 16 degrees. So we're looking at temperatures close to 25 degrees above the normal. Warm everywhere really, but that's where we're seeing the biggest push in terms of the warm weather. Winds out of the south gust about 70 kilometers per hour there on Friday down around Port aux Basques, and that's going to be sort of the story. And this system basically stays in place like this for the next couple of days. It doesn't start to break down until we get to next weekend. So even on to Saturday here on Boxing Day, it almost is a carbon copy of what we had on Christmas Day in terms of the weather, but you're going to start to see Saturday night Lab City begin to cool off, and that moves its way across the region as we head through the following days after that. Southerly winds in place for tomorrow. They intensify as the system approaches Lab City, gust about 70 kilometers per hour there, and again, some very warm weather. Christmas Day for St. John, 6 degrees, 7 and 7 on Saturday and Sunday. Then it drops off a little bit as we head through Monday and Tuesday. Looking over to western Newfoundland, you'll see again temperatures up to 9 degrees, 8 on Sunday, and then it drops off as well. And same story for central Newfoundland as well. We start to see a little bit of the rain along that front as we get to Sunday, but otherwise nice conditions for Christmas Day and Boxing Day as well. And then moving up to eastern Labrador, again, it takes about an extra day to see the drop in temperatures, but you'll notice for western Labrador, we start to see the drop in temperatures on Sunday, and then we're back down to closer to seasonal values in the minus teens there, but at least we've got a few days of some pretty mild weather, albeit messy for some parts of Labrador.
2020 has been quite the year for politics. We're ending it with a new premier and a pandemic that very few people predicted a year ago. Andrew Furey started the year as a surgeon, and now he's here in the premier's office. Thanks for sitting down with us.
Thanks, Peter.
So you came into the premier's office with the least amount of experience of any premier we've had. What's been the most surprising thing in the few months that you've been in here?
Well, you know, experience is a relative thing. No one has experience of being premier until they sit in that chair and they feel the weight of the responsibility of the people of the province on their shoulders. So even though I came in as an outsider, no one has had that experience before. The most surprising thing for me in 2020, and there have been many surprises in 2020, I guess personally, has been the weight of the empathy that I feel for people who are going through these challenging times. I feel the anxieties that families feel. I go home with that at night. I understand that people are incredibly anxious and fearful about the uncertainty that this pandemic and this global economic crisis has caused, and I feel it too. My family feels it too, and I guess I wasn't sure how I would respond from that perspective, because as a surgeon, people complain about pain, and you're used to fixing that pain. You're used to being able to give a quick fix to a pain that someone presents with you. But in this job, sometimes the fixes aren't easy. Sometimes the fixes aren't immediate. But there are fixes there, and I share optimism and hope for the future, especially heading into 2021.
And let's talk about 2021, because the pandemic has dominated 2020. Next year, do you think it's going to dominate in the same way it has this year?
Well, it's not going to go away. I mean, certainly we all recognize the positive news that happened last week with respect to the vaccine. I mean, that is incredible reason for optimism, not just as the premier, but as a doctor and as someone with experience in epidemiology. That's incredible reason for hope and optimism moving into 2021. But we can't lose sight of the fact that there is going to be this time of transition as people are vaccinated and inoculated. The virus is still going to do its thing and spread. So we need to make sure that we're getting the vaccine out as fast and as effective and as responsibly as we can. At the same time, it's still incumbent upon the people of the province, and they've done an amazing job to date, to continue to follow those public health guidelines. I think if we're looking back in 2020, one thing all Newfoundlanders and Labradorians should be very proud of is the way that we've handled this pandemic.
As we're heading into the holiday season, this is a time where people traditionally mingle, they socialize. I saw a recent poll that showed that Newfoundlanders and Labradorians out of any province plan to do the most socializing, even in the middle of a pandemic. It's going to be.
I hope not. I hope the poll is wrong.
It is going to be a very different Christmas, but there is still that desire that people have to get together. And it's also a time where we're going to see more people moving in and out of the province. How worried are you about what COVID may mean over Christmas?
I'm very worried. I mean, you know, there is an uncertainty with a time like the holidays, like a change in a situation that can create uncertainty, and I recognize that Newfoundlanders and Labradorians want to get together with their friends and family. I want to get together with my friends. But we need now more than ever to resist that temptation. We've done so well to date. I mean, we're being held to a pinnacle around the world as an area and as a region that have really come together and done well with respect to the public health guidance and containment of this vaccine. We just need to check it for a little bit more. I'm hopeful.
How is your Christmas going to look? How is it going to be different?
It's going to be very different. I mean, we unfortunately are having to exclude family members. Normally, Christmas Day is at my house, and Mom and Dad and my sisters and brother and aunts and uncles and cousins come, and unfortunately that number is over 20. So we won't be having that event this year. But we're adapting, and we're like all families are. Some will be virtual, and we're adapting accordingly.
When we talk about the vaccine, I think a lot of people were frustrated when they heard that it's probably going to be June before the sort of average Newfoundlander and Labradorian is able to be injected. Considering the fact that the timelines keep moving, we weren't even expecting to get any vaccine in December, and now we're busy inoculating people. How likely is it that we could see that date move up as well?
I'm hopeful, very hopeful, that date will move up. But everyone needs to recognize, of course, the vaccine is most important in the triaged, prioritized groups of people, because those are the groups of people who are either on the front lines or who will occupy hospital beds and ICU beds and cripple the healthcare system all in the same time, and never mind the morbidity and mortality that those groups themselves will assume. So from an individual perspective and from a systems perspective, those groups are incredibly important to be triaged and prioritized. Generally, statistically, there are lower priorities for a reason. So I'm hopeful that the vaccine, as companies come online, like AstraZeneca, I'm hopeful is just around the corner. That, of course, is a protein-based vaccine that is a more traditional vaccine that all your viewers will be more used to, like a tetanus, measles, mumps, rubella type of vaccine. That is stable and can be distributed quickly and equally can be scaled quickly because it's technology that already exists. So I'm hopeful that that date will move.
When you look at the states, the Vice President, Joe Biden, President-elect, he is receiving his vaccine. We're seeing other leaders are very publicly showing that they're getting a vaccine. You've said you're going to wait until your number is drawn and in the regular order. Yeah. Isn't there some value both in publicly seeing leaders like yourself and Dr. Fitzgerald getting the vaccine, but also from the fact that this province is in trouble if people like Dr. Fitzgerald and yourself are knocked out with COVID for a period of time?
A fair point, but if you look at statistically in the epidemiology surrounding this virus, I'm at fairly low risk. So I wouldn't be able to sleep at night if I took a sample, a vaccine away from somebody who truly needed it, an elderly person, a person who's working in long-term care, an Indigenous community member. Those are the people that need the vaccines first. I'm no longer a frontline healthcare provider. My wife is. She has the confidence in the vaccine. I have the confidence in that she's getting the vaccine, and she's getting that today. So I recognize the value in having leaders publicly endorse the vaccine, but my family is endorsing the vaccine, and I hopefully that's signal enough in the confidence of this vaccination process.
Well, it's not just a pandemic we're going to be dealing with in 2021. We're also going to be facing an election. We'll have more about that coming up on Here and Now. Welcome back to Here and Now. I'm sitting down with Premier Andrew Furey, and let's talk about an election, because that's one thing we do know is going to happen in 2021. When do you think that election should happen?
It'll happen in 2021. I've made no hidden statements about it. I'm going to call an election. I'm going to follow the law, which I believe is a good one, and call it in 2021. So I guess I've only been here now for 4 months, so I guess I have 8 months left to call it.
We saw the House of Assembly made it clear they would like to see the election happening in the fall. Now that we know that the majority of Newfoundlanders and Labradorians are likely to be vaccinated, life will be more back to normal. Why not just set a date for the fall? Everyone knows when it is, everyone can plan, and we can end all this speculation about when's there going to be an election.
Because like I said, I'm going to continue to follow the law, and we'll have an election in 2021. That's part of normal democracy. We've seen in other jurisdictions how you can have an election in the midst of COVID-19, and I don't see that as the ultimate barrier to executing everyone's democratic right.
But by leaving this up in the air, doesn't this give you an advantage? You can kind of pick and choose the best time based on the poll numbers and, snap your fingers anytime.
Listen, Peter, I didn't create the British parliamentary system.
But you could set a date.
I'm operating within the British parliamentary system, and I'm going to continue to follow the rules of that British parliamentary system.
But you do also have the option of just setting a date.
I could tell you now when the election would be, and I'm sure that you would really like that. But that's my prerogative and mine alone.
When you look at the issues that are going to be coming up in 2021, aside from the pandemic, that's still going to be around, what do you think are the biggest issues that Newfoundlanders and Labradorians are going to have to deal with?
Well, of course, we're still in the midst of the global economic crisis and the global oil crisis, and I think that those are ones that Newfoundlanders and Labradorians are challenged with from a family perspective. The women and men who work in the oil and gas sector in particular have put in a rough 2020. The tourism industry has put in a rough 2020. And in addition to the healthcare industry has put in a rough 2020. We've all put in a rough 2020. I see the challenges still on the horizon, but I also see them as opportunities, because we have been afforded an opportunity that generations of Newfoundlanders before us have not. Newfoundlanders and Labradorians have not. And that's this opportunity to use this disruption to reimagine where we want to be, not just in 5 months, but 5, 10, 15, 20 years. What do we want Newfoundland and Labrador to look like? This is almost like a hard reset as we emerge from this pandemic. And that will be our true legacy. That will be how future generations will look back and judge us, not based on the virology of the pandemic, but they will judge us based on how we responded to this pandemic and to these challenges. And this is an opportunity that generations of Newfoundlanders and Labradorians haven't had before us. And I think that's the challenge. That's the biggest challenge we face. We can't revert to the mean. We need to set a new mean and reach higher so that we can be a stronger, more caring, more compassionate Newfoundland and Labrador that is sustainable for all families.
We've seen plenty of former premiers say we need to change, we need to do things differently, and then change gets hard. And there are people who won't like the change, and then often they back down because they have other priorities, they have elections they need to win. How do we know that that's not going to happen this time, that there's lots of talk about change, and then once things get tough?
Well, I mean, change isn't always tough, right? Change is reimagining who we want to be and making targeted investments so that you can look back in 15 years and say, look, that was an initiative that we started and now it's come to fruition. So change can be increasing the immigration targets, which I'm a big proponent of. That helps us fill workplace gaps, but it also helps us solve the demographic crisis that's facing Newfoundland and Labrador right now. Change can be implementing a $25 a day daycare, giving people the opportunity to have affordable daycare while they themselves can reach their true potential, their professional potentials. So those are change isn't always bad, but that's our job as leaders, to communicate change, to make people see the bigger vision, to know that Newfoundland and Labrador can be in a better spot in 5 to 10 years if we are all in the same boat, moving in the same direction with the same goal and concept in mind.
Do you plan to lay out what that vision looks like before we have an election? Will people have sort of a full plan to be able to make a choice?
Absolutely, but I think I've already shown, even though it's only 4 months, I'm committed to immigration. I'm committed to technology. I mean, every chance I get, I'm surprised we haven't talked about technology yet. I really think that it's a huge opportunity for Newfoundland and Labrador to diversify our economy. We're creative in people, and we've shown that we're good in this space. it represents incredible renewable opportunity for Newfoundlanders and Labradorians. So, you know, I've already shown that I have a focus on immigration, I have a focus on technology, I have a focus on the oil and gas sector, and while transitioning to what I believe is an abundance of green natural resources that we have here in the province, and we should use those, develop those, so that we can be the green battery that drives Eastern Canada.
Well, Premier, there's a lot on your plate. I appreciate you taking some time and sharing your thoughts.
Thanks, Peter. And look, I want to say thanks to all the media as well. You've put in a hard year and you've done a great job in communicating the facts around the pandemic, and that's not always easy, and Newfoundland and Labrador owes you a debt of gratitude as well.
Thank you.
2021, it's going to be an interesting year. Now, in our Far From Home series, we've been connecting with Newfoundlanders and Labradorians who live abroad. Robin Dalton is a grade 5 teacher living in Maryland, and you think about it, people here worry when we get 8 cases in a day. Well, that state in the U.S. is averaging about 2,300 new COVID cases every day. And in tonight's episode, Robin tells our Jen White about the challenges in the classroom and what her community's been facing.
Hey Robin, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. How are you today, Jen?
I'm good. So you're living far away from home right now. Can you tell me where you're from originally and where you are?
I'm originally from St. John's, and I am currently living in Waldorf, Maryland, about 20 minutes outside of DC.
So let's talk about the pandemic. What was it like when it struck?
It was just absolute chaos when it first struck. I mean, I remember in March, it was the second week in March, and as a school teacher, the gossip going around our school building was that, there's a chance schools are going to close for a few days so that we could do some cleaning. Our superintendent at the time said that, there were no cases of COVID at the time, so our school system hadn't planned on closing. And then literally the next day at work, they called an emergency staff meeting, and it was a Thursday afternoon. They told us we were going to report to work the following day with students, and we were to have our students clear out their lockers and desks, and that we were going to shut down for 2 weeks. At that point, I'm not going to lie, as a teacher, all the teachers in the building were very excited for a, unannounced kind of break, not really realizing what was in store. So we had 2 weeks off, and at that time, the whole state basically went into shutdown.
What are things looking like now?
So we've definitely gone through some waves. Over the summer, our numbers here in Maryland started to settle. I mean, we definitely had much larger numbers than you guys there in Newfoundland, but in the grand scheme of, I guess, the United States, we were doing pretty good. So the governor here in the state of Maryland started to move us through the phases of reopening the state and allowing things to somewhat get back till normal. And then September, our cases started to rise again. So here we are 9 months later, and we are still, we've actually reverted in the phases. So lots of things are closing down again. Our restaurants are now gone back to 25% capacity. Same with retail stores. It is mandatory in the state of Maryland. You have to wear a mask. So you do get turned away and not allowed into stores if you don't have a mask. Many people are wearing gloves. And we're following the 6 feet apart guidelines.
And so are most people obeying those rules and wearing masks when they're out and about?
Yes. So thankfully where we live, we see lots of people in the community doing their part to kind of slow the spread of COVID-19. But you hear of stories, especially, we're only 25 minutes from the state of Virginia. So I have coworkers that live in Virginia, and it's very different there. That people are not following the rules and there's not as strict guidelines.
You mentioned school. How did the school year look this year?
Different than anything I could have ever imagined. I never in a million years thought I would be a teacher in a virtual setting. Someone my age, I know everyone thinks that the younger teachers should be very tech savvy. I, for one, am not a tech savvy person. So we will continue all virtual until at least January of 2021, possibly further even into the new year as well.
So how are you finding the virtual learning?
It is challenging for teachers, students, and parents alike. I face the daily challenge of even getting my kids to log in on time. I'm still holding full day lessons, but trying to get all these kids online and actually focused without the distractions of what's obviously ongoing within their households, or some of my students are in daycare centers. So it is a challenge for every party involved in virtual learning right now.
And let's talk about other areas that COVID has affected. Have you noticed any businesses closing in your area?
Yes, I went into the mall for only the second time since January of last year. I mean, it was as if I was walking through a ghost town. There were so many stores that were either boarded up. Some stores had closed signs for good, meaning they will not be obviously recovering from COVID-19. There's restaurants that have already been sold. So, people in those lines of business right now are definitely struggling and feeling the effects of COVID-19 on the economy here.
It's been a while since you've been home. Do you think you're going to get home anytime soon to Newfoundland?
I hate that question only because,
Sorry.
no, I figured that would be a question you would ask. But, I mean, it's devastating to me. Thankfully, I managed to get home at least once or twice a year. And I'm fortunate that my family usually gets out to visit me twice a year as well. So the fact that I haven't actually stepped on Newfoundland soil since last August is devastating. All my family, my relatives, and my close friends are all still in Newfoundland. And the fact that not only do I not have a trip planned, I really don't know when to expect that I'm going to be able to make it home.
Are there things about Newfoundland in particular that you miss?
Oh, the ocean. The ocean. Being able to just get in a car and drive and see the Atlantic Ocean.
All right, Robin, before I let you go, I want to give you a chance to send a message home. What would you say to friends and family living in Newfoundland right now?
I love you all. I miss you all. And although some of you are definitely feeling like you're stuck on Newfoundland and can't get off of that island, sometimes the grass is not always greener on the other side. So enjoy that beautiful province that you live in. And I hope to see you guys real soon.
All right, Robin, thank you so much for speaking with me, and stay safe.
All right, you do the same, Jen. Thank you.
Well, let's see who's celebrating on this Tibbs Eve. Reg and Margaret Simmons in Woody Point are celebrating their 60th wedding anniversary today. Frank and Florence Dalton in Cape Broyle will celebrate their 50th anniversary on Boxing Day. Happy 57th wedding anniversary to Rose and John Bragg, who celebrate tomorrow, Christmas Eve. And Eric and Bridget Way in St. John's are celebrating their 53rd wedding anniversary today. Happy 60th anniversary on Boxing Day to Harvey and Mabel Best of Torbay. Clar and Verna Young from Wabush are celebrating their 52nd wedding anniversary. They now live in Grand Falls, Windsor. Happy 55th anniversary to Al and Marguerite Best from New West Valley. Happy 50th anniversary to Frank and Evelyn Carroll from Conch, now living in Paradise. Sam and Marina Philpott in Eastport will celebrate 57 years together on Monday the 28th. And a happy 63rd anniversary today to Norman and Ruby Hillier in Corner Brook. Happy 56th anniversary to Ralph and Mildred Bowers in Grand Falls, Windsor. And happy 56th anniversary today to Martin and Shirley Cooper. Happy 64th anniversary this Sunday to Dawn and Juanita Mullins in Lark Harbor. Wilbur and Loretta Petty celebrated their 57th wedding anniversary last Saturday. Happy 58th anniversary to Lorne and Grace Wicks in Clark's Beach. And in Stephenville, happy 50th Boxing Day wedding anniversary to Dorm and Barb Chip. Nayward and Nina Avery of Southport celebrated their 61st wedding anniversary yesterday. Also yesterday, a happy 60th anniversary to Trixie and Stanley Brown of Trinity, Bonavista Bay. Happy 60th anniversary to Mabel and Harvey Best on Boxing Day. They are in Torbay. Horace and Norma Hookey in Port Rexton are celebrating their 51st anniversary. Now to some birthdays. Happy 96th birthday today to John Tetford of Lawrencetown. Happy 91st birthday to Jim Lamb in St. John's. Happy 93rd birthday to Helen Sparks. She'll celebrate this Sunday in Rocky Harbor. Happy 94th birthday to Clifford Earl in Corner Brook. Boxing Day is his big day. And happy 90th birthday to Nora Reed in Halifax, formerly from Wandsworth. Mamie Colburn is 92 today. She's originally from Long Island, now living in Springdale. And Ann Thistle in Corner Brook turned 90 on Monday. Congratulations. Happy 90th birthday on Boxing Day to Gertie Green from Sunnyside. And a happy 90th birthday as well, also on Boxing Day, to Elizabeth Crocker from Witless Bay. Happy 92nd birthday greetings to Mary Jane Hopkins. And 90th birthday greetings to Onias Ralph in Grand Falls, Windsor. Onias celebrated on Monday. Birthday greetings on Monday the 28th, that's coming up, for Jessie Collins, who will celebrate her 97th birthday, originally from Indian Islands in Notre Dame Bay, now living in St. John's. Happy 90th birthday to Marjorie Reynolds, formerly of Salmon Cove, now living in Carbonear. And happy 95th birthday wishes to Doris Bull of Eastport. Her big day was on Monday. Happy 93rd birthday greetings this past Saturday to Marie Weir, formerly from Little Bay Islands, now living in Springdale. And don't forget to get your birthday anniversary wishes in early. We're doing these on Wednesdays now over the holidays. Well, we'll round out with the fact that COVID-19 grounded most people's Canadian travel plans in 2020, and that might not change for the first half of 2021 either. So let's go out on a bit of holiday spirit and check out a virtual tour of some of the snazzy light shows right across Canada. Have a look.